welcome to the broadcast, my dear old fruits. Did the king of the Raglands really think that he was going to be able to upstage the king of these lands, of this United Kingdom, on Pa's big day? Not on your Nelly. It was a glorious morning here in the kingdom, with much excitement, with peers in traditional red robes packing the House of Lords to the rafters, and you'll be relieved to hear that there were many sightings of tiaras in attendance. Yes, these gemmy bridles glittered under the Palace of Westminster, that ancient house of kings, queens and parliament. But as the scene was being set, armed forces marched along the Mall, and finally we caught sight of the sovereign's carriage procession, with two outriders on grey horses. Their Majesties travelled in the Diamond Jubilee State Coach, and they were followed in the Glass Coach by the Queen's companions, Fiona, Marchioness of Lansdowne, and Lady Sarah, alongside the Master of the House and the Lord Steward. The Princess Royal was as smart as she always is in her role as Gold Stick in Waiting. She was travelling by State Landau with Silver Stick in Waiting, and the Field Officer in Brigade Waiting. All those sticks waiting, pass me the smelling salts. The King was handsome in the Admiral of the Fleet Royal Navy dress uniform with cap and sword, and the Queen wore her coronation dress by Brucey Oldfield, and if you haven't noticed, I'm wearing my coronation gown or coat dress affair in honour of that today, so it's getting another airing, as it often does for state occasions such as this. A hushed silence fell as their Majesties took seat on ornate golden thrones. The King having put on the imperial state crown and robe of state, the Queen wore the King George state diadem and robe of state. And I've got to tell you, in all seriousness actually, that I'm thinking of writing into the King or the Royal Collection, or whoever it might concern, about the imperial state crown, because you'll have noticed it has, as well as the gems that are encrusted into it, it has the pearls all over it, and then 4 main pearls at the top that sort of sit there dangling. And I don't like them. And the thing is that it would have worked for previous generations before broadcasting, when you only see images that are static, but when it's in motion and it's moving, don't you think it's distracting? And don't you think that it's not especially regal there? I think that it cheapens the look and makes it less stately, and I think something has to be done about it. I'm not suggesting that they get removed entirely, but just stabilised. At the moment they are held within rose diamond caps, and the whole arrangement is known as Queen Elizabeth's earrings, after Queen Elizabeth I. They have a very long, rich history. 7 pearls were received as a wedding gift from the Pope to Catherine de' Medici for her wedding to Henri II of France in 1533. And later they were passed on to Mary, Queen of Scots, and after that they were purchased by Elizabeth I and everything. So they've got a long history. So I'm not saying get rid of them, but I am saying please could we have some modification. They need to be modified. Actually, they distracted me at the Queen's funeral too, the late Queen's funeral, trembling as they were alongside her coffin and whatever it was, like some sort of dingleberry, I'm afraid. No, it distracts from the Cullinan too, that wonderful diamond at the front, which that's the thing that should be catching the eye really and glinting in the light, not those pearls. It's an oversight, and I don't like the way that they just tremble. As we've come to expect, there were some protesters from Republic lining a tiny portion of the route. They say there were 500 there. Other people who are onlooking say it was more in the region of 50 people, but even if it was 500, even if it was 5,000, but let's go with 500, what they're telling us, well, that's not exactly a fabulous turnout for the King's first speech of this kind, is it? For his first speech, their first opportunity after 70 odd years to harangue the King, and 500 people in a population of all getting on for 70 million. Well, at least they seem to have rebranded from that graffiti design into something rather more civilised, a rather civilised font there on their neon yellow. And it was an absolutely delicious moment. You know, I was really hoping that the King was going to do this, actually. I was really hoping he was, and he did. As he went by in the carriage, he waved at them. How absolutely fabulous. I thought it was a wonderful little bitchy moment, if you will. I only wish that it was a royal wave executed in the style of the late Queen Mary, which was a proper regal royal rave. It was kind of this rollicking affair of the hands, very, very energetic. She would do. I'm not doing it justice there, my dear, but I suppose a little flick of the hand is also a rather nice acidic aside. Having a nice day there, folks? Well, truth be told, they're actually helping to increase support for the monarchy, so it was nice to see them there doing the King's work for him. That's what I say. It's a lost cause, just like the Sussex's cause. You can always have another go when it's William's turn, my dear, but of course then you're competing with his extreme popularity and Queen Catherine's. The first King's speech in 70 years paid tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth, and the time came for Black Rod to be announced and summoned, which sounds far more exciting than it actually is. The Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition seem to be sharing some high jinks, how very civilised, and our Sovereign imparted the intentions of His Majesty's government, telling us that ministers will put the security of communities and the nation ahead of our rights of those who endanger it. Well, we'll see about that, won't we, in the coming weeks. But I certainly have zero faith in the government, zero faith. They've broken every other promise. The only promise that they'll probably see through is the promise to enshrine in law this smoke-free generation that they tell us about. Their Majesties were well attended by the King's equerry, who kept a watchful eye over the young pages, and they did a very mature and professional job of looking over the robes of state for the King and Queen. I did witness that. The King read very nicely. I was a little bit afraid that he wouldn't be able to attain quite the same tone of neutrality that the late Queen had, but he did. He really, really did. You know, he's got that sense of a little more sense of drama and emotion in his speaking, you know, with his theatrical training, this kind of thing. But that didn't influence him on this occasion. I was really pleased about that. I mean, it was far too slow pace for my personal taste, but then again, that is magisterial and it was appropriate. Although one thing that I would advise is getting some sort of lectern in so that His Majesty doesn't have to hold the speech himself, unless of course that is what he prefers to do. But did you notice that very heavy crown? You know, he's sitting like this at 75 years of age with the neck down. You know, all it takes is one false move and you've got a slip disc or something, or the neck goes or the crown falls. I mean, heaven help us. It had me on tenterhooks for a moment or two. I thought the crown might go. And all I'm saying, you know, I'm not saying that Charles can't cope with this kind of thing now, but in 5 years, 10 years' time. So all I'm asking for perhaps is just a discreet little, small and very ornate, pretty little lectern or some sort of document holder so he can have his cards there, perhaps run his finger along. You know, nothing obtrusive or gaudy, but to save him having to look down at sheets of paper or whatever it was. I think there's an elegant solution that can be found. Although I must say that the lighting loses something. The strong lighting, which is very good, I suppose, if you want to see everything on the box. Back in days of yore, it was a bit more dusky and a bit more dim, and there was some soft ambience. I say, please, can we just put all this health and safety nonsense aside and return to some candelabra? Please, because we want a delicate atmosphere, something royal and regal. This is not Hollywood, it's not Montecito, and we don't need studio lighting with some prince popping up at the windowsill. Queen Camilla looked incredibly beautiful in the diamond diadem, didn't she? Absolutely stunning. The diadem, of course, was heavily associated with her late mother-in-law on stamps and coins and iconography, this kind of thing. And I felt that the diadem flattered Camilla much more than some of the wider tiaras that we see, such as the Greville. The jewels on the Queen's ears were gorgeous as well, weren't they? Especially for clip-ons. Did you know? Did you know that Camilla does not have pierced ears and that all of her earrings are clip-ons or have been modified to clip-on? Yes. She told Vogue magazine a couple of years ago that her children have tried to persuade her, but she says, nothing's going to pierce my ears. Well, it certainly makes me feel better to know that Her Majesty wears clip-ons the same as me, dear. But as you know, I've recently had mine pierced. I took the plunge, so why can't you, Camilla, dear? from one queen to another. But, of course, it had to happen, didn't it? It had to happen.
Good evening, everyone, and hello, New York.
The yapping of a stray pawing at the gates of the palace, clamouring for attention on Pa's big day.
I was so relieved to be invited back, but then I started to question whether his invite for me to actually do stand-up was in fact his idea of a joke.
It might have been the first King's speech in over 70 years. But we ain't talking about Charles. Oh no, he doesn't count today. The true king is in town. And he wants to take time out of the privacy tour and make a speech of his own on the very same day. You just knew it was coming, didn't you? Wearing 4 military medals, no less, although 3 were just a gift from Granny. And a Royal British Legion poppy, he appeared doing stand-up comedy. As the joke? No, he was actually telling jokes, or so he tries to convince us. You see, this is the trouble with some in the public eye, but particularly royalty. They do sometimes attain this inflated ego, because as you will have seen when you see them at receptions and out and about, every word they utter, no matter what it is greeted with people fawning all over them. Then this is from the word go, from birth. So it is an absolute tribute to the more humble members of the family that they actually turned out all right without it going to their heads too much, because it's very easily done. But the weaker ones, such as Harry, it very much goes to their head and they think they're absolutely hilarious, because all they have to do is open their mouth and cough. Oh, you are funny, you are jolly. And the likes of Meghan Markle, twisting her legs all over him when they get together, when she would never have dated him, if this was real life we were talking about. But all of a sudden, they're oh so funny, they're oh so charming, trying to butter up royalty. Royalty requires humility, you see. That's why Harry's not a great success at it, because he always mistook that kind of flattery as a genuine compliment. You see, that's why, he's having a go at this comedy. But it is in the name of charity, so I have no problem with that part of it. It's more the timing of it, and also mixing in the solemnity of his awards, the poppy, with a comedy show abroad. I don't know. I just didn't especially feel it was the more appropriate occasion for such a thing. But, it was a charity event for veterans, and lots of them were there in their regalia, and I'm sure some of them weren't offended. So it is what it is. Harry made jokes talking about ginger people.
Either way, due to the shockingly low representation of gingers last year, and out of respect for my fellow endangered species, here I am, reporting for duty.
Ha ha bonk, very self-effacing. Haribo. Still a child's sense of humour, this is the thing. You're not in the barracks now, Harry dear. This is the thing, the boy thinks he's still in the barracks, doesn't he? Where everyone joshes about, taking the mickey out of one's hair colour or his Pakistani friend, which he put in other kinds of words, Well, it's all very well and good when you're young and mucking about and rather immature, but at 39, oof. But of course, he wants to drive this point home, doesn't he? So he says, and whether we are wearing the uniform or not, we must continue to uphold the values we learned side by side on the base. Yeah, on the base, boys. Bring the base back. The drill square and on the battlefield. Values of service. Values of honour and integrity. And values of togetherness and solidarity. And thereby ends the real King's speech. Did I do good, Pa? Do you love me as much as you love Big Willie? Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining, dear. Don't talk baloney, because that's exactly what you're serving. And the vulgarity continued. Vulgar, vulgar, vulgar. A spokesperson for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and this is really quite unbelievable, a spokesperson told Mail Online, an official spokesman from Montecito, that an article from the Times that had been published suggesting that the Harkles had snubbed an invitation to the King's forthcoming 75th birthday party was wrong. They have had no contact from Buckingham Palace, they say, so they were never invited, according to them. Well, probably, because if they were to invite the Harkles, well, firstly, why would they? They're traitors. But secondly, they'd end up having to foot the bill, wouldn't they? Which comes to quite an amount when you're talking about Haz and Meg. Jets, security, full entourage, glam team, makeup, hair, styling, designers, bowling alley, and room for a pony. This is what they expect. The spokesperson continued, "There has been no contact regarding an invitation to His Majesty's upcoming birthday." Oh, boo-hoo. It is disappointing that the Sunday Times has misreported this story. Well, actually, to be fair, I can believe them. The Times has got quite a good reputation, but I've never enjoyed the Times. I've really tried to. I've got a subscription with it, but it lets me down occasionally, and it also amplifies the likes of Tom Bower, and I'm afraid I don't put much faith in him either, in his reporting. So I understand. I don't understand the identity of the Times. I don't really get what they stand for. Maybe they don't stand for anything. But whatever it is, I just don't get it. I digress. But, I can sympathise there. The Sunday Times and the Times do get it wrong. The same spokesperson also denied that Meghan is returning to acting. The article then goes on to quote a close source, so they call it, or an insider, to do with the Harkles. This source told Mail Online that the Harkles had not received any invitation and were unaware of any celebrations until the stories came out. "I'm sure the Duke will find a way to reach out privately to wish His Majesty a happy birthday like he has always done." What, to sweeten the sour poison of his betrayal? How kind. And a friend of the couple, who was this? James Corden? Oprah? Cheesy Nachos? Gail? I'm running out of options. Anyway, some friend, maybe Doria, took more potshots at the palace, suggesting that the palace leaked stories of the snubbing to avert attention from Kenya. The story is being positioned in a way to make it look like the Duke is snubbing his father, which he has not. Well, he would have form doing so, because the last 3 years have been one great big snub, haven't they? Including the book, The Spare. Considering the trip to Kenya didn't go well, this might be a welcome distraction. Excuse me, who's doing the distracting? Because when you talk about Kenya and suggest that it didn't go well, maybe you want to have a word with the people of Kenya, because despite a few rumblings and a few people asking for apologies and very cordial, decent conversations being had about it, I'm not denying there was some upset, which continues to go on. It was largely warmly received, and it was a spectacularly successful visit, no matter which side of the lollipop you are licking. So I just won't stand for that kind of talk. Singapore has turned into Emerald City, and the Wizard of Earthshot as environmental prize winners were announced. His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, wore plush green velvet and a bow tie. Very smart. He was joined by stars including Hannah Waddington, whoever she is, Sterling K. Brown, whoever he is. Oh, and my Auntie Kate. As you know, Miss Blanchett always has high praise for Big Willie. She absolutely loves it. I mean him. And her makeup was designed by Mary Greenwell, who said, "Just before we head off to the Earthshot Prize, where Kate has been on the judging panel from its inception 3 years ago, initiated by His Royal Highness Prince William." And I love a bit of Mary Greenwell. For those who don't know, she really came into public consciousness. She'd been a makeup artist for a very long time, but came into public consciousness via photography sessions, mainly with de Marchelier, I think, Patrick de Marchelier, in the 90s, involving William's mother, Diana. And she created a brand new, fresh look. That more modern, contemporary 90s look that we came to know and love through the styling ambitions of the likes of Greenwell and de Marchelier, the various hairstylists. Was it Sam McKnight? And if you're curious to see how Mary Greenwell works, it's rather fascinating. Some of you will know Lisa Eldridge's YouTube channel, where there are a couple of videos, one from 2012 and one from 2017 at least. So you can just Google them, dear. I'm not leaving links this time, but just Google Lisa Eldridge, Mary Greenwell. One is a tutorial, a Kate Blanchett style tutorial, actually. I think that's the oldest one. And then one from 2017 where she sort of emulates a Diana look. But it's quite interesting to hear about her speak so fondly about Diana. And I really love watching her doing the makeup as well. She quite famously uses her fingers still to this day to achieve the look that she likes. And she's got a sort of signature style. Very interesting. I like watching that kind of stuff. So you might want to go and watch it yourself. But thank you for watching me and keeping me company. And I look forward to seeing you next time, my dears. Take care, won't you? Have a nice evening. Stay royal and toodle pip.